First up, obviously we have Man City. You really need to have at least 2 of their players in, and there's 2 key standout players in that category. I don't think you can go without these 2 players because I think they'll be quite highly owned and they've just got such a high point ceiling, and also a good captain option. First one is Raheem Sterling. Sterling's just been in incredible form over the last few weeks, and to be honest, all season. If you look at the way he's playing, pretty much everything is going through him in that City team. He looks probably the most dangerous player they have. He's playing quite high up, he tends to drift around at different positions, he gets on the ball quite a lot, and he's quite involved around the goal area. If you've watched the last few games, he could have potentially even had even more points, and he was probably unlucky not to have more in the last game against West Ham. The second player is Gabriel Jesus. Jesus, with Aguero being out, is an essential pick for me just because he's at the focal point of that incredibly aggressive and dangerous play that Man City do. With Man City, they just dominate teams throughout the game, and you think with Jesus being right at the top, he's going to get a lot of opportunities, and his stats the last few games have actually been pretty good, and he's kind of up there with Harry Kane and Sterling. Next up on our teams to target is Tottenham. Tottenham have been a little bit disappointing over the last few weeks, but with the 3 fixtures they've got left, I think they're really going to be looking to make a bit of a statement, to be honest. Now, on the Tottenham assets, for defence, I think Vertonghen is probably the best option. I've seen a lot of people asking whether to go for Davis or Vertonghen, and whilst Davis does have good attacking stats, we're just not certain that he's going to play both. And at this stage in the season, you really need to be going for reliability and certainty, especially in the double game week. So for me, I'd go with Vertonghen. In midfield, I think you can take your pick really. I think they all have cases for their own. I think Son's been pretty good at home, fairly consistent, gets some good double-digit scores. I think Dele Alli's really come into his own actually the last few weeks. He seems to be growing in confidence, and I think he's a good differential in this run-in. And probably the best of the 3 would be Christian Eriksen. I think he's been so consistent this year. He's involved in a lot of the creative play, and he's just playing really well. So I think if you want a good solid pick, Christian Eriksen's your man to go for there. The player from Tottenham, obviously, you really must have is Harry Kane. He has been disappointing the last few weeks, but he's still ticked over, and I think that's important not to forget. If you watched the game on Monday, yeah, he didn't look great, but the other side of that is he didn't look great, but he was very close to getting a double-digit score. You know, Sissoko only had to put that chance in, or if he got the rebound for Vertonghen, he really would have been on for a big score. So I think with Kane going for the golden boot, he will be looking for goals, and I just think you have to have him. I mean, it's probably not the easiest fixtures as they look on paper, but they're still good fixtures, so must have Harry Kane. Next up, we have Manchester United. United, again, ticked over, but it's been a little bit disappointing. But I think you still have to cover them in this double game week because they have really good fixtures. The most obvious, which really I would recommend, is David De Gea. He's been consistent all year, and you just know he's going to play. Gets good save points. They've got really good defensive stats, Manchester United, so definitely David De Gea. In defence, I think there's only 2 players you can look at, and that would be Valencia and Smalling. Now, if you have the money, Valencia's a great option, obviously because he does get forward and can get the odd assist. But I just think at that price, he's a little bit too much. Now, Chris Smalling, I think he's fairly nailed on. I think Mourinho seems to like him, and interestingly, he's been getting quite high up the last few games, so you never know, you might get another goal. So Chris Smalling would be my pick there. The attacking options are a little bit more difficult. I think Sanchez is a good option, but he's a lot of money. I think he will do well, but personally, I wouldn't pay that amount for him. Pogba's a tricky one because you just never know with him. That's not to say he won't get a good score, I'm sure he probably will, but for me, I just don't think you can rely on him. And with the news that Lukaku's out, I think Rashford could be a good option. But again, do we really think he's going to play both? Personally, I'm just not 100%. Next up, in the lower sort of category, I think we need to look at Swansea and Southampton. Swansea have got some really good cheap assets in there. And for people with a lot of the Burnley assets, I think that's where you go to, that's where you look. I think in defence, they've got some good quality there. Mawson's a really good player if you've got the money. A bit further down, I think Norton and Van der Horn are both good options. You'd like to think in those games they probably will be quite tight, so perhaps there's a clean sheet in there. And obviously if you're looking for a goalkeeper, Fabianski's a good call. And then the other player from Swansea that I would consider is Jordan Ayew. The problem with there is that Swansea don't have the best attacking stats. But that being said, there's a real relegation dogfight going on down there, and they need to get the points now. And also they have good fixtures. Jordan Ayew does tend to be involved in most of their play. He's kind of the focal point of their team and probably their best player. So I think if you're looking for a cheap double game week player, he is a really good option to go for. In terms of Southampton, I think you're probably really looking at one or two of the defensive players. I actually think the goalkeeper McCarthy is doing really well and going under the radar. He's getting a lot of saves and they're going to have to keep it tight at the back, so there could be a clean sheet in there. Obviously Cedric's a good option because he's got that more assist potential. And if you really want to take a punt, obviously going a bit more forward, Tadic could be an option. For me, I wouldn't go there. I just think he's too unreliable, and again, at this point, we need consistency. So the captain decision this week is extremely hard. I think there's a lot of different ways you could play it. I think if you're high up and you're looking to play it safe, I think Kane's your man to go for. I think if you're chasing and you want to go for a little bit more of a punt, I think Jesus would be a good option because they're going to score a lot of goals in those games and you just got to think he's going to get a couple of them. Sterling, I just think it's a little bit too dangerous. I don't doubt that in one of the games he'll get a really high score, but is he going to play both? I think that's the problem, and with a captainship, that's where you need to look. I think a really good way of looking at it, which as mentioned from the Scoutcast on Twitter, he said with Kane, he didn't play that well on the game on Monday, but he still scored, and really he was still really close to a big haul. I think with Jesus, he's unlikely to go, crazy, but he will tick over. He'll probably get a couple of goals. He said with Sterling, he's probably not going to play both, and I think I kind of echo those thoughts that Kane, he's just, he's going to play twice. He's going to really want the goals, and you think he's going to get a couple, and his ceiling is just very high. Jesus is also a very good option, but how often does he really get, those double figure hauls? How often does he get those hat tricks? Not quite as much. I think he'll do well, but the point ceiling for Kane is probably a little bit higher. So for me, I just edge on Kane with Jesus in a close second. And finally, I'd just like to talk a little bit about hit strategies this week. I've seen a lot of talk about it and what's the best things to do. And I saw a really good point actually, which from FPL Fredo on Twitter, and he said to me, the best way to look at points hits this week in a double game week is look at them individually. So look at them from an individual point of view, So for example, if the player has a single game week and you don't think they're going to do that much, if you're replacing them with a player that's going to play twice with potentially better fixtures, the likelihood is that will repay itself on the whole. So I think for this week, hits up to a -8 are okay. I think that's fine. I think you've got a good chance of repaying them. I think for moves like, Mahrez to Sterling for a hit, 100% do it, absolutely. Or, alternatively like Lowton or Burnley, maybe to a, you know, a double game week defender like Vertonghen or Mawson, I think you're probably going to get your points back there. So I think if it's sensible and you think about it from an individual point of view, I think the hits can work.